It's an absolute pleasure to be able to moderate this incredible panel today. I would like to first thank everyone in Liga MX Femenil who is making this summit possible and bringing so many bright minds from the women's football game together today. I would also, of course, like to give a huge warm welcome to everyone in the audience who is following the summit online. Hopefully soon we can have this amazing event in person in one of the great cities in Mexico. Me personally, I'll be in Monterrey for the CONCACAF Women's Championship in July, and hopefully I will be able to meet many of you there. But for now, we have the ability in this beautiful virtual world to travel all the way to San Diego, to Houston, and then very far away to Sydney, Australia, for what I can tell you is going to be a fantastic 50 minutes today. Our panel, called Challenging the Status Quo, couldn't be a more exciting topic, in my opinion. And our guests today will provide us with incredible insights to what they are doing to challenge the status quo on a daily basis in each one of their organizations. So first, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to Jessica O'Neill. She's the current president of the Houston Dash. Jessica joined the Dash in March of this year after spending 9 years with the Carolina Panthers and the Charlotte FC as Director of Marketing Communications at the latest. She lived in the beautiful city of Charlotte, and today she's moved to another great city, a very big city, which is Houston, after breaking many records with Charlotte. So I think she's already making a lot of great things happen in the Dash, and we're looking forward to seeing more of this to come in the near future. For our second panel member, we take a quick flight over to California. We would like to introduce you today to Molly Downtain, who is the first ever general manager of San Diego Wave FC. Molly joined the club shortly after its formation in 2021, and she's overseeing every single detail of a completely new women's professional football club. Does it get more exciting than this? I'm also excited to mention that Molly previously worked for U.S. Soccer for 6 years, where she worked closely with Jill Ellis and oversaw the administration of the world champions. So Molly also played at Chicago State, and in 2011, her team made it all the way to the NCAA Final Four. So very impressive by Molly there. Last but not least, we have with us Sarah Walsh from Australia. Sarah's an absolute legend of her game. She has practically done it all already, playing at the club level in the US and in Australia, as well as representing her team in a World Cup. Today, Sarah is the head of women's football at the Football Australian Federation, where she also leads the legacy program for next year's World Cup in Australia. I don't know if she's going to mention it today, but she did score a goal in Mexico in your beautiful stadium, Stadium Azteca. We have 2 professional football clubs from one of the best leagues in the world today, and one federation who is amongst the leading nations in women's football. So how about we get this thing started? I would like to ask the team here today, what, in your opinion, has... or I would like to ask you, actually, how has the status quo for women's football changed from when you started your career in sports to today? So maybe we can get started with Molly.
Sure. So I can go all the way back to even before I started working in women's football. I watched, 2 leagues in the U.S., unfortunately, fail. And so I've been watching now how successful the NWSL is and what the changes we've made to expand upon that. And whether it's bringing in marketing, whether it's how we're promoting our players. I think a big piece of that for us has been also watching the 2015 and the 2019 successes for the World Cup teams, is that we were able to see immediately following those, bigger followings for both 2015 following that World Cup, we had bigger followings. 2019 following that World Cup, we had bigger followings in the US. So definitely seen a huge jump. And I think that there's recognition of, these players are very marketable and that they are a great piece to promote. So I think it's huge. And I'm excited to see from my 10-year-old self who watched women's professional soccer in San Diego to now bringing it back to San Diego here quite a few years, 20 years, some years later.
That's an awesome story, Molly. We really appreciate you sharing that with us. Jessica, how about you?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks for the question. It's really incredible. I'm new to women's football as a career, but as far as following the game, playing the game, understanding the reach of this beautiful sport, it's incredible to see where we are right now at year 10 of the National Women's Soccer League and where we all know we're going to get to, and the speed at which we will accomplish some things commercially, broadcast media rights, player development. We just accomplished a major one from a CBA side, but that I know we'll get into later. But when you think about the opportunities within the league, the commercial side really stands out as far as corporate partnerships, the media opportunity that's there, different types of companies coming to the table and saying that they'd like to be involved because they see the value that the sport brings, especially in this country, and they know that the upside is there. So when you think about how we can shorten that time frame between where we are right now and ultimately the peak of the league in this country, the commercial side will make a big difference. And the more attention that's in that space, the better. So excited to see where we are now and know that there's a ton of good people across the league working on this.
I love it. And I think we've seen a lot of Ally activity in Charlotte. And I know Ally is quite involved in the NWSL. So I can imagine, of course, now you have Chevron in the dash. So it's fantastic. But Sarah, let me head over to you. You've seen a lot of things throughout the years. Where are we today on status quo?
Sorry, I had to be first to do that. Look, I think my reference point is, I obviously spent a lot of time in the game as a player, and I've been in the administration side of the game at Football Australia for a good 7 to 8 years now. So I've seen the progress from being a player on the Players Union executive to get our first contracts, to being in the administration when we signed our pay equity deal for our national teams. So I've seen it all. I think the biggest, and our team here have touched on it today, is this, the situation where we have the sports growing at a pace, whether it's through player conditions, the professionalisation of leagues or national teams, or even just the World Cup itself. We're starting to see 1 billion people watched the World Cup in France. That obviously has an impact on the interest around the clubs around the world. We need to be able to capture that interest and really take it to new heights. But what I'm seeing is the sport itself growing from within, but also society shifting around us. So in a new social context, society's ready. You're starting to see partners lead with their dollars, lead with their conversations. We're starting to see people turn up to matches. And what I've absolutely loved about this change is that and I'm sure you guys would agree, you go to a Matildas match or you go to, which is our national team, or you go to a women's league match here in Australia, it's a completely new audience that we've captured, and that's where we're going to see the growth. That's what I'm excited about, because we've opened up a new path to women's sport more broadly.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. We'll go into our first topic for our panel today, and we're quite curious from our side, what you believe that in your organizations, or specific items that you're working on, whether it's from the strategic planning, from a communications planning point of view, marketing plans, or even a potential innovation plan. What do you believe are, in your organizations, 2 key ways that you are currently challenging the status quo at your organizations? So maybe, Jessica, we can get started with you.
Sure, absolutely. It's something that we think a lot about on a day-to-day basis, of considering the mindset that we bring to decisions, whether it's a small decision seemingly or a large one. But in each of those situations, the Houston Dash are in the 9th season of the club. And how do we think differently, without regard almost to what had been done previously? Because to the point of growing the fan base, both within the market and with the league itself, there's an incredible passionate following within each of these markets, and obviously paying attention to the league. What we need to do is think about that core group and how to fuel them and ensure that they have the communication and the transparency they need, but also think about growing that pie even bigger and bigger and bigger. So one of the ways we do that is you don't have to be a fan of football or even a fan of sports to enjoy what the women's game brings in that experience. And that's a little bit of a step back for some people, because if that's where their head is at, that, folks that have followed the national teams or that have played previously, or women, those are our target markets. And that's not it. That's just minimizing our lens and our lane to potentially grow if we think about those groups and segments only. So there's a lot of pushing on a regular basis, and we have a phenomenal team that's working on that. We obviously have a benefit of a very large market here in Houston that absolutely loves football, which you can't make that part up. It's legitimate. So the other way too is that recognizing that if we believe it's possible, that the folks in the front office, on the technical side, on the staff, if we believe it's possible, that will emulate through everything that we do. If we're fully bought in, if we're invested in making this as successful as it can be as a club standpoint, we have an owner that fully supports us in that regard, which is a tremendous support system. But if we believe it, it will happen. And I there's some obvious simplicity to that, but I also do think that it's important as a reminder on a daily basis that there is no idea that is off the table. So we just have to keep using the creativity and the innovation that attracted me to this league specifically, knowing that there would be more freedom to try new things and see what works.
Definitely. Love it. Over to you, Sarah. Are there two specific things that you think you would highlight from things that are happening today in the Federation in Football Australia?
Yeah, both really relate to we've designed and put in market a legacy plan to leverage the Women's World Cup next year. And, many countries have done it before, many sports have done it before. And before we actually put this in market, we worked out, what are the things we need to do differently to be left with more than memories of the World Cup. We want tangible economic and social outcomes from hosting this event. So there's two parts to that. One, I would say, is uniting stakeholders. We work in a federated model here in football in Australia, and also we have over 2 million participants that are considered part of our football family. How do we bring them on a journey to have them engaged and make them feel a part of this major event? But two, how do we mobilise them to drive the outcomes we want to through this national vision? And through that, the second part of that, stakeholder unity piece is actually driving a campaign called Our Game. Our Game is and I happily say that we actually worked with UEFA. They have a campaign in market called We Play Strong. And the concept for us was really start to mobilise the community around a vision for creating 50-50 gender parity and participation by 2027. And so the two parts to my answer are stakeholder engagement and alignment through a vision, and also driving that interest through a campaign. And I can happily say that we've set up a legacy plan. One, it's owned by the Federation, who will be here beyond the event itself. Our targets extend beyond the event itself, and we work daily with our stakeholders to bring this to life. And for us, it's really about meeting the needs of the community. We have over 2,500 community clubs that currently exist. They are the heartbeat of our game. They will be the levers we need to pull to make sure that women and girls are actually retained at a club level. And we think that we've been quite innovative around the way that we drive this vision across what is a very large country, how we mobilise our community around it, speaking the language of women and girls through our new Our Game campaign, which is very much mirrored off the back of We Play Strong. We actually found that there was kind of a gap in the product that we provided. Everybody loves Sam Kerr. Everybody loves the Matildas here. However, there's a group of women and girls in Australia through our market research that absolutely love Sam Kerr but don't play football. They don't watch football, but they love Sam Kerr. It's a football culture that we wanted to really capture and start to, drive to our game as a real new and broad consumer. These people are turning up to matches because they love the culture of the heroes that we've created through the national team. So we called it Our Game, and now we're going to drive content around the World Cup for it to really capture this audience beyond the World Cup.
I love it. And one of the things that I love the most about both of your countries in this panel is that the women's game is stronger than the men's game. And I don't care what anybody says, but you have the best product on the women's side. So I love to hear the 50-50. But of course, I always aim at saying, in Australia, maybe there will be 60-40, but 60 being women, 40 being men. Molly, what do you think from your side? Already looking at your social medias, we can see that you don't call your substitutes, you call them game changers. So I love that little detail. What else are you guys doing in San Diego?
Yeah, so obviously we're an expansion team. I think it's the shortest runway for a sports team to ever put together a team and a franchise. So we've tried to heavily focus on the things that matter to us, and that's what matters to me, what matters to Casey, and that was player welfare. Okay. So we've tried to heavily focus on that, and that has become our paramount focus. And it's mostly been, we have and I think it's probably one of the only ones in the league, we have a mental health and well-being coach that is with us every single day. She's on staff that works directly with the players and is a resource for them, which I think has been lacking for a bit. And I think a lot of people forget that piece matters, is that they are the person, they're not just a player. So as much as we can provide for them things off the field that help them as the person matters to us. We also are, focused on where are they living, what can we accommodate them with off the field that allows for them to be a better player on the field, put them in a place that they can call this home. And then a big piece for us is that we are in the process of building a training center right now that is specific to our team. So there's no men's team attached to it. It's just for us. We already have 2 beautiful grass pitches that we train on every single day. And to that, we're going to add a, between 6,000 and 10,000 square foot training center that will be specific to our team. And that mattered to me because I've seen how crucial that is for players to have a locker room specific to them, a gym, a training room, and know that it's just theirs. The branding is just theirs and it only represents them. So that was one of our biggest focus in the training center tied to the player welfare. And then the other piece is that we worked really hard, and Jill Ellis worked really hard to bring in high-level females in decision-making positions. So, her first hire was me as the general manager. Next was Casey Stoney. Our VP of marketing, Laura Wolfstein, came in a few months back. Our CRO, Vanessa Shea, was hired on. So we've got a lot of females on staff, and I think that's important because I think it's always important to look at things through different lenses, and that in the women's game, we haven't seen as many females in the decision-making positions. And so I think it was really important to bring that lens to this club and give a different viewpoint.
That's awesome. I'm loving it. And we have to, of course, recognize in the same state that you're in, there's also another team that's also making some noise, which is exciting. I did have a conversation a couple of months ago with your very good friend Jill Ellis, and she mentioned to me, there's a lot of great things going on over there, but over here in San Diego, we are a football club, and I love to hear the strategy behind it. I love to hear what you are all doing. Also in the US, it's beautiful what Kansas is doing with a stadium just for the women's football team. I'm sure other people will be able to use it, but the intention of creating this first stadium in the US that is built specifically for the women's team. So great to hear on your training center. And in that same type of conversation, we'll go again with Sarah in Australia. They're doing a very special project as well for the women's national team, for the Matildas. So Sarah, we would love for you to tell us a little bit more about that special project that is taking place in Australia and currently being built in the beautiful city of Melbourne, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, there's a bit of rivalry between Sydney and Melbourne. I'm a Sydney girl, but I do like to visit Melbourne. If you get a chance to come to Australia, please visit both. Again, through this bold legacy plan we have in place, we have 5 key pillars, and one of them is called the high performance pillar, which is squarely focused on making sure that we not only lift the cup with this Matilda squad in 2023, we actually build a legacy beyond that. So making sure that there's investment into our junior national teams. They've got a solid schedule of matches against really great opposition with world-class support teams around them to be able to generate talent beyond the Sam Kerrs and the Steph Catleys and the Ilana Kennedys. So that's what that pillar's about. Through our work with federal and state governments, we've been able to mobilise them around this vision, and off the back of that, and it's actually been in place for a very long time, the project that you mentioned, but a home of the Matildas in Melbourne will see a facility being developed that is centred around a high-performance home for one of the homes for the Matildas. We're a very large country here, so but a significant investment from the state and federal government to build out this world-class facility. It does not exist for any sport here in Australia, so it's most definitely industry-leading here. But it will have the workings in terms of the recovery centre, the sports science centre, everything that they need to be able to perform when we're actually using FIFA windows here in Australia. So we do actually have a strategy in place that principally, there's not that many. Well, clubs probably think there's too many FIFA windows, but we don't think there's enough. But look, we'd love to have the Matildas at home as much as possible because, to build their brand here at home, it's big. We also want to take them from being a domestic brand to a strong global brand. They live overseas. The reality is they live in the UK. So we think very carefully about how we utilise the windows that they play at home. And we have a principle that we do want all of Australia to be able to see this wonderful team. So this home is in Melbourne. We will be basing them once it's set up and having them access that and Melbourne access the Matildas. We do have a strategy in place to take them all around Australia, but it's just another indicator that, there's so much interest around the World Cup. We've been able to mobilise our government, our private sector, which we talked about today, to be able to bring in the much needed investment that our sport needs. Much like the US, we are a very competitive market here. We are the number one participated sport at a grassroots level. But in terms of eyeballs, commercial interest and investment, we're a little bit behind a lot of the major codes here. Australian Football League, much like the NFL there, baseball. So we have the same challenges, but in the women's space, we've got a head start. Football is very, very popular.
I love these stories because, of course, our audience today is primarily based around the Mexico landscape, and the clubs in Mexico are doing a great job. The Federation in Mexico is doing a great job, the league as well. So hearing these examples from other places around the world is fantastic. I will shift a little bit towards another area, of course, as well in the overall sphere of investment. In the NWSL, the clubs and the players have come to an agreement, a famous collective bargaining agreement, or CBA. Molly and Jessica, we would love for you to perhaps give the audience a little bit of background as to what this CBA is, what does it mean for you as a club, and what impact do you think it will have on the players?
Jessica, you want me to go?
Go for it.
The collective. We're excited that the collective bargaining agreement has finally been signed. Took quite a bit of time. Was very happy to see it publicly done on the TV at the Angel City opening game. I think this is going to be a huge piece for setting a standard and pushing that standard collectively. It is something that was negotiated. Obviously, it was worked on heavily with the players' union and with the league, and it's a positive step forward in having transparency. It's a public document as well, so if you would like to look at it, it's publicly available. But having that transparency and making it publicly known that we are pushing the standard, we're setting better standards for the league overall. And that we have a commitment to working with the players and the players union. And I would love to see this become more of a partnership as we move forward, with the players' voices being heard as well, in congruence with the league. And I think that's going to get us to a point.
Absolutely. And I can add there, I echo the sentiments, right? You look at just a major celebration too. I think that the collaboration and the months and months of work between the league, the board, the ownership, and obviously the players having a major voice in pushing for this came together and found common ground in a sense that, really sets the league up for success in the short term. Right now, I think we can all feel the energy around this, but also you think about the long-term growth of the league and what was done in these last few months will have a ripple effect, that each one in the future will be an improvement on this original one. And it's really unique to think about that, about setting this up for long-term sustained success. And I imagine that, this is just the very beginning, but a really key, important, pivotal step, even going into the 10th season for the league to be where we are now.
Definitely. And your comment, Jessica, I think works perfectly for our next question to transition very smoothly. We're quite curious. We have a lot of changes that happen every year. But from your opinion, Jessica, what do you think, in 10 years' time from today, when you look back at 2022, what do you hope to be most proud of in regards to challenging the status quo today?
I do. When I think about 10 years from now, I know every single stadium in this space, right? Every single women's football match that is played across the world, the stadiums are full. I know that. I know it'll happen regardless of the size of the stadium, where it is, the location, the point. You see it in several areas already, and to see that now and know that that's all of it is good for the game. So I think when we get to that point too, from an innovation standpoint, there's so many opportunities to really evaluate the lens at which we as clubs look at the game itself, and how we can be different and how we can elevate that experience for the folks that are coming, for the folks that are watching, for the players themselves, for the coaching staff to truly be the best. And when we do that, if we all come together like that, like I know we will, and it won't take us 10 years to get there, but by 10 years, it'll be really, really well developed. The sky will be the limit at that point. So, the innovation piece, the technology piece, the willingness to be flexible and adapt quickly based on new opportunities, I think that'll set the league apart as a younger league. Willingness to bend things to make them make sense.
Definitely. Back in 2014, I had the opportunity to do a documentary on the Portland Timbers and Portland Thorns. And the Thorns have had incredible audience for the longest time. And during my time when I visited this club, I always said, this is the club of the future. Today, of course, they're going through some hurdles for sure. It couldn't be in better hands with our common friend, Karina LeBlanc, who's now taking over a little bit on the sporting side. But we hope to see more of these cases. Very recently, of course, everyone knows about the case in Barcelona now, back-to-back sellout crowds, which is incredible. And I share your vision, and I fully agree with you. I think in 10 years' time, it's going to be the norm. So, Molly, what do you think? What are you looking forward to looking back in 10 years' time?
Yeah, I think I'll echo some of what Jessica said, is that I want to look back and say that we, wow, in 10 years, we've got bigger stadiums and full stadiums, and, NWSL names are all household names, not just, the top 3 players. So I think all of that is important. But then for me, from a sporting side and off the field, is I want those standards of what's being provided resource-wise. I do think everyone should have a training center. I think everyone should be in, high-level housing. They should have cars provided. Some of those norms that we see in other men's sports, I want that to just be the norm that's being provided for the women's side. And then I think that we have a really unique opportunity with women's football that this can be paramount, that player welfare can become the paramount focus. That is, if you looked back 10 years ago, players weren't making a living wage to make this their only job. I think we're getting there, and we continue to move to a place where players can say, I am a professional soccer player, and this is the main way that I make money, whether it's brand deals, whether it's, your actual salary of pay. So I think we're getting even closer to competing with the men's sports of that this is their job and this is their sole focus, and they get to just focus on that, and then providing that standard off the field. So I want to look back and see that I was in that moment of transition, that the standard was starting to be set on resources provided to players.
I love it. Sarah, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, it's such a big question. I actually my mind went to, I have a 10-month-old now, and as a parent, I start to think about what kind of world she will live in 10 years, and I want her to be able to turn up to a community club, or turn up to a Matildas match, or if she wants to travel to the US and watch league over there. And I absolutely love what Angel FC are doing right now, because it's an indicator that women's sport is redefining what ROI means for women's sport. We're not just adopting the same metrics that has historically been part of the men's game. Women are getting to define it. Look at the women on the call today. We're actually getting to redefine what's important. Maybe it's engagement through social channels. And I actually, I'll get to the answer in a second, but we actually have a major bank here. One of the biggest banks in Australia is now our partner, CommBank Matildas. That investment is a huge indicator here in Australia that there's been a shift around the way that major corporates are looking at ROI. And through a conversation we had on a panel once, I found out that some of the things that they most value around our partnership is something that they hadn't thought that would be valuable through signing with us. They have seen the sentiment. They're a bank, right? A bank's a bank. And, they were talking about the sentiment and the satisfaction levels of their staff, having been able to talk about this partnership. Doing a really great thing in supporting and investing in women's sport has really risen satisfaction levels of a 40,000 plus staffing organisation. And so these are how corporate partners are thinking about return on investment now. It's not your simple viewership. And although they're important metrics, still we're getting to redefine, that absolutely high fanatical engagement that women's sporting fans have. We're able to monetize that. And so to answer your question, I'm hoping in 10 years' time there is so much more investment into leagues like the one in the US, the one in the UK. We're already starting to see it. I'm hoping that the national team ecosystem grows hand in hand with the club system, like we're seeing over in Barcelona. I mean, a win in Barcelona is a win for all women's leagues. It is just a matter of time before, corporate partners are actually simply just we're running out of properties to sell pretty much, because and I think you're starting to see the smart investors. If you look at Angel FC, the completely shift in the model there. The investors that they've been able to draw, I think we're going to see a trend in that across all leagues across the world, and they realise that they need to get in now. So in 10 years' time, we might see that trajectory completely move off the planet, and I'm hoping that's what we see.
100% agree. And I think, it could potentially lead quite well to our next question. I would love to hear from the three of you. You have such an amazing experience in the game. What advice would you give football clubs that are currently trying to navigate the women's football ecosystem? A lot of people are trying to shape their clubs. A lot of people are trying to shape their federations. Is there, what specific advice would you like to give a football club out there, perhaps in Mexico or somewhere else around the world? And maybe I start with Molly. What do you think, Molly?
I think the big thing for me is that, fully commit to your investment, fully put yourself into it. I think a lot of times over the last, decade or so, we saw half investment, half in, but I think we're seeing people like Angel City, ourselves, that are putting a full investment into their women's side, and they are getting a return on it. And then I think a big piece for me is that incorporate your player's voice into things. It's an important piece that they have a voice in what is moving forward and what you're doing with your club. They're not going to make all the decisions, but having them be a part of the discussion matters, because they do feel an investment on their own then at that point. So yeah, I think that would be probably putting the player's voice into it and fully committing into your investment.
I love it. Sarah, I know you're not working on the club side, but you do have a good relationship with many clubs, not only in Australia, but around the world. What advice would you give a football club today in the women's football ecosystem?
Yeah, I think for some reason, and I obviously played in the club system in many different countries, so I'm aware of how they operate, and what good and bad does look like. But I've always been fascinated that women's football has never, or in a lot of spaces, never been treated. Not now. It's obviously changing, particularly in the US, which is fantastic to see. But it's been seen as a cost center. But actually, no one really runs business like that. If you treat it like an investment and you treat it like it's something that's going to bring great value in 10 years' time, because you're starting to see a shift in the corporate sector, treat it like that. Treat it like that, because that will have a flow-on effect in terms of the support that you provide to the players so they can play at a high level to make sure you've got a quality product. So it's similar to what we've been saying on here. If you're going to invest, do it at 100%, because, in business, if you don't invest and you don't actually put the time and care into it, it's really not going to go anywhere, not to the fault of women's football. So I think one thing I would say is starting to find the right investors, find the right partners, because there are partners out there that have moved beyond CSR. They're starting to think about what's the next big thing. Women's sport, women's football is like crypto. Who knows where it's going, but we know it's going up. Everybody knows it's going up. People might not understand it, but get on it now. If you're not on it now, you might miss the boat. And I can only imagine what these the licenses for clubs are going to look like in 10 years' time. So, I think you need to really articulate the ROI. And I mean, what I absolutely love about the US is that all your clubs are so very different. And I know I talked about Angel FC today, but I think they've somehow created something new. But I do realise that a lot of the clubs in the US because your club ultimately is there to attract the best players, and your best players create the best product, which, winning and success for a team is built into your brand equity. So, I understand that you guys are doing really amazing things. So I think it's just articulating it and finding the right partners to actually build it with you.
100%, Sarah. I love it. Jessica, how would you like to finish this stage of this panel on this question?
I would say in a very similar note, I think when we talk about investing and investing fully and using the voices of the team, what it all comes back to for me is authenticity. And I believe, if you build things authentically, with the resources around you, right? So things that feel right to your players, to your stakeholders, to the landscape that you're in. And to your point, Sarah, there's currently 12 teams in the league in 12 very different cities, very different markets, different stadium locations and brand voices and identities and player personalities. And, we can't copy and paste the same business model across all 12, just like we certainly can't with what works in the NWSL, will work in other countries, because it will become inauthentic very quickly to the media in that market, the fans in that market, the potential partners in that market, that this doesn't feel like something that fits here culturally. So I think that is the challenging piece, is understanding that you have to both look inwardly of the team around you and make sure there's typically good ideas there. You just have to sometimes ask the right questions to get them out of people, because if they've been kind of only in their lane with what they're responsible for, you might not know what things they have beneath the surface without asking. And then obviously, once you have a good idea, internally of who you'd like to be, having some conversations externally with both folks that are already paying attention to the club and those that aren't, to understand how to grow it in a way that's authentic to that market. So I think it's something that, because we have such an ability to be transparent and accessible, if we're not authentic, it will immediately be clear and it will stand out in a very obvious way that we didn't do this in a way that our fans, partners, players, stakeholders felt was genuine.
Completely. So I've been in a conference here in Dubai this week, and one of the participants came over to me and said, Andres, I'm known as the troublemaker wherever I go because I'm always challenging and I'm always challenging the status quo. And I said, hey, that's fantastic, because I'm actually doing a panel this week on challenging the status quo. So I'm going to incorporate you into the question. As you all are a little bit of troublemakers, and I think it's good for us to be troublemakers as we challenge the status quo, what would you say is the most valuable lesson that you have learned while challenging the status quo, whether it's in an organization or at a club or in a specific situation? Molly, maybe we start with you again.
Yeah. So I think mine is just that I've always been a person who's put my head down, worked quietly, worked in the background, was the one holding things up when maybe there was a fire in the background and you're just trying to make sure no one else sees the scene. But I think what I've learned in my recent role is that my voice matters and my voice is important, and that unless I use it, nothing's going to change. So I think it's given me a new opportunity to voice my opinions, give feedback, and then see change actually happen, which I think oftentimes, especially females, sometimes you just put your head down and work and focus on the grind and getting your work done. But I think what I've realized is that my voice is important and my input is important, and you do see actual change after you use it. So
I love it, Molly. And definitely your voice is super important, and we're so far loving what you have to say. So keep it coming for sure. Jessica, how about you?
Sure. I had a very good friend tell me once and use a phrase that is similar to troublemaker, but positioned potentially a little bit more positively, in that she said, one of my strengths is that I'm an agent of change. And I hadn't heard that phrase before, but she did challenge me in saying that is not something that comes naturally for everyone. So sometimes pushing and pushing and pushing because it comes naturally can turn people off, can make them feel like they're not moving fast enough or they're not thinking about things the right way, and have almost the adverse effect. So I think understanding first that you can't have a room full of 100 people and every single one of them is trying to change things, or we won't get anything done. So I think it's that recognizing that similar to Molly's point about everybody's voice matters, there's different roles and decisions have to be made and should be made with different voices. Some are louder than others, some are quieter, some will need prompting, some will have additional questions, but truly the best businesses are run with balance at that level. And also that you really do have to pick your battles. Again, if it comes naturally to you, that if it's constant and consistent, then it will begin to wear people down. So I think it's a little bit of making sure that you save, some priority. Not every single day can be, a massive must, stop what you're doing and fix this, because then at a very quick point, it becomes irrelevant, because you said that yesterday and the day before that and the day before that. So I think understanding when being a troublemaker is really needed, and when just, talking things through and asking questions will suffice to make sure that we're thinking about things correctly. So maybe the opposite of Molly, in that her, she's getting there. I need to dial it back sometimes, but I think collectively all of that is needed.
We can balance each other. That's fine.
Yeah.
Exactly. I love both answers so far, and it kind of leads me back to the football pitch, to be honest, because you need the different characters, you need the different individuals, the different personalities in order to win a championship. And ultimately, I think in the world of sport, that's what we want to do. We want to win championships, we want to win games. And similar off the pitch, it's very similar. We want to achieve specific objectives, and we have to use everybody on the team to make it happen. Sarah, how do you see this topic? We have two very, very interesting opinions so far. Can't wait to hear what Sarah has to contribute to this one.
Yeah, I absolutely love. I love the I guess the concept around being a troublemaker. I'd like to take a bit of a macro view on this one. Ultimately, us women on this panel are standing on the shoulders of women who've come before us. And so, ultimately what we're all trying to do here is, one of two things is actually, redefine what football looks like without just including women in it. We want to redefine what it looks like for our part of the game, which I think will impact and in a positive way the men's game, because our sport as a whole needs to come together, the women's side and the men's side, for it to truly thrive against other sports and against other entertainment areas that have people's attention. So for me, naturally there's going to be a little bit of friction on the way. And I actually received some great advice more recently from a woman that's done it well before us. And she actually just said that I have a really good clarity every single day around playing what's in front of me, playing the ball, but also thinking about, the end game and what the long-term vision is. And hopefully we don't have to be troublemakers in the future, because we find ourselves more often than not surrounded by other women, because for a long time we have had to represent the views of a gender. More often than not, you're the only woman in the room. That is shifting, that is changing. So I think that through critical mass, having more women and more diverse women as well, women of colour, First Nations women, women from all abilities, multicultural women, we're starting to reshape the thinking of the system, so we're not having to be called troublemakers anymore. And I think that tide is changing. So I was super excited to meet you guys today. I'm very happy to hear there's so many more women in the administration, and you guys could name many that have come before us that have really paved the way and done the heavy lifting. Hopefully there's many women to come to support us on the journey.
Amazing, Sarah. We're getting towards the end of our session today. We have about 3 more minutes, so each one of us will have 1 minute to give maybe a quick closing statement. Me, from my side, I would like to let you know a little story, and that is that about maybe 8 years ago, so let's go towards 2013, I had the opportunity to visit a club in Mexico, one of the big clubs in Mexico. And I said, oh, you guys have an incredible football club, an incredible scenario. You're missing one thing. And I said, it's a football team on the women's side. And they kind of looked at me like, what are you talking about? And today it's amazing to see that the women's league in Mexico really thriving, really starting to challenge the status quo, really trying to position itself as potentially one of the best football leagues in the world. So it's great to see, how things are starting to improve. And that's kind of the closing message from my side. Of course, I'll wrap up everything at the end, but maybe everybody gets a quick minute to perhaps give one last message from your side. If you have anything specific to Mexico that you would like to say, I think the audience would, of course, appreciate it. They've done a fantastic job. They have a lot of work to do still, but I think they're heading definitely in the right direction. So we'd love to hear one closing remark from each one of you. Perhaps we'll start with Jessica, who's very close. Well, both of you are very close to Mexico as well.
We are, yes, and I will. It does bring up the great point about why I chose to pivot my career into football specifically, and it is the international appeal of this game. It's the most popular sport in the world. Somebody so eloquently framed it recently that it speaks all languages. The game itself speaks all languages, and when we think about that, and how accessible this is, how international it is, how beloved across the world, different cultures. It's a uniting thread, regardless of where you come from, how old you are, or your skill set. It means that we truly have the power to grow this to infinite heights. And without that love and passion, it would be a much larger uphill climb. But with it, especially, again, I've seen it so far in Houston, with our close relationship with Mexico, and it's been incredible to see across the landscape culturally.
Love it. Molly, maybe?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm very honored that you guys invited me to this panel with 2 amazing guests as well, and I am very excited to see what this league holds. Excited to see what it's done in 10 years for the NWSL. And for Liga MX Femenil, it has grown leaps and bounds, and I'm excited to see where that goes as well. But all in all, I'm honored to be here and very much want to hopefully see this game continue to grow both in the US and globally. And Sarah, hopefully I can get to World Cup in Australia. As a fan, finally. I didn't get to do a couple World Cups as a fan, so.
I think you will find a great welcome in Australia and New Zealand next year for all of you, of course. So, Sarah, one last message for the audience?
Yeah, just firstly, thank you very much for the invite to share the learnings, and I think that women's football, particularly, it's actually a very small world. Our players play overseas. I as a player, it's very, very small. Some of my most favourite players played for Mexico against us, and we had some of the best rivalries. And it's small. We need to share the learnings. I'm sure we'll get to a point where it will become competitive for players and some of the best talent in coaching. And but for me, I think that my only piece of advice is to really to take some of the words of my colleagues today is make sure what you're doing is authentic. It is very different to the men's game. It's got its own history. It's got its own brand identity, and it sounds like you're on the right track in making sure that you amplify that rather than a cookie cutter approach. And I think to be able to do that like you've done today and utilise the expertise in the women's game, the people that have been working there for many years who understand what it is, and then invest in it to get it where it needs to be, because your whole sport will thrive in Mexico. So I'm super excited to watch where this goes with the league. And, you're all welcome to come to the World Cup. Just hit me up. We're very excited to host you here in Australia.
I love it. Thank you, Sarah. Well, Jessica, Molly, Sarah, a huge thank you to all three of you. It's been an absolute pleasure. I mean, an absolute honor for me to have the opportunity to moderate this panel, a real privilege. And hopefully we meet Mariana soon in person in one of the stadiums in Mexico so that we can celebrate and join together in this great league in Mexico that is really pushing all the boundaries and proving people wrong all over the world. So really a huge thank you to all three of you, and hope to see you very soon. So for now, we go back to the studio. Thank you very much.